Cool. Good morning, everyone. I'm Albert Chavez.
Sahib Singh.
And welcome to our podcast. So today we're going to be reviewing the book Base by Emil Forssell. And we wanted to just review this because it's just a really simplified version of where we're both at right now, trying to become better men and just trying to become the best individual that we can be. So the idea is just to have a great foundation, both mentally, physically, and spiritually, just so you can become the person that you want to be.
Yeah, and I think this book was really important because it's short, sweet, and to the point, and it covers so many important things. And it wasn't something that just had a lot of fluff. It was very straightforward, and I think that each of the points, each of the chapters, and each of the quotes that were in those chapters were really powerful to get us on that path to be mentally, physically, and spiritually masters of ourselves. I think we're going to start by just kind of going over our main thoughts of the book and talking to each other about what we learned from it and some of the most important things that came out of it. And we highly recommend that you even read this book yourself. It's a quick read. It's an amazing read. I'd say one of the better books I've read this year so far.
Yeah, just like you said, how short and sweet it was. They didn't put a lot of fluff, and it just was really fundamental to where we're both at right now. So let's get started. So before I started, there was a little poem I wrote, just kind of inspiring this book a little bit and just understanding where we're at. It's, I'm not better, I'm not worse. I'm just basing myself on me. And I know I'm different from the rest. I understand my value and I love myself. Staying true to me may come at a cost, but it's a cost I'm willing to take. Because it's at the end of the day, the biggest cost is time, and time waits for no human. Yeah. And so, I just wanted this to kind of be an understanding of like who I am and just loving myself and just becoming the best version of me. All right, so let's get started. Okay. So what's really good about this book is it just started off from a really good basis. Chapter 2, it's called From Doomer to Bloomer. And it's basically just stating and setting the scene of where most men kind of lie. So this book is catered towards men. However, I believe it can honestly be for anybody who just wants to become a better versions of themselves.
Yeah, I think this chapter was an important foundation, as you mentioned, because the way that we see the world is the foundation of everything. The way that we live our lives, the way that our perception of everything is so important. And one of the things that was in this chapter is a lot of us kind of go through this feedback loop of we have so much information being thrown at us. We have school, and then we have social media, and then we have our relationships and this and that, and it kind of can weigh us down. We aren't meant to be like absorbing that much information, and that's why like from doomer to bloomer, the way that we see the world, we need to be seeing the world as we're in springtime and we're like blooming, right? Like we're growing and kind of embracing ourselves and understanding ourselves before letting outside energies kind of affect us.
Yeah, it's really easy to just kind of go in the same routine. I actually talked about this yesterday. When you kind of just feel like the world is just always cascading on you and projecting all this information, and we're just taking it. We absorb it through social media, or even if it's just like a podcast you're into, we don't always say what we want to feel, and it can get us down, And so it's just really just basing it how you can kind of just start that shift in your mindset. So towards chapter 3, and I love. The reason why I also love this book too is he always starts with a couple of quotes to kind of set the scene for the stage. Especially for this one, for chapter 3, staying the course in avoiding the modern sirens. Mm-hmm. So when he's talking about sirens, he's referring to the Greek mythology sirens who would lure
the sailors. Yes. It would be like the beautiful mermaids and women, and the sailors would jump off overboard, because they've been at sea for so long, and it becomes a distraction. They haven't seen a woman or something, and then as soon as they'd get overboard, they'd be like eaten or whatever the myth is. It's in the Odyssey, right?
I believe so, yeah.
And we face a lot of those in our real life. I think you want to read that quote. Let's hear it.
I would love to, yeah. So this is by Naval Ravikant. He's a great philosopher. So the modern struggle, lone individuals summoning inhuman willpower, fasting, meditating, and exercising up against armies of scientists and statisticians weaponizing abundant food, screens, and medicine into junk food, clickbait, news, infinite porn, endless games, and addicting drugs.
Yeah, I mean, those are literally the sirens of our modern age, right? Like porn, the news especially, gaming, drugs and alcohol. And these things are becoming a distraction and even like more of a crutch.
Yeah, so how would you say that you've been trying to battle that? Because I know every day I'm struggling.
Yeah, I think like right now, especially with everything happening in Ukraine and everything happening around the world, that's kind of all that's being thrown at us.
Yeah.
Even like our social media is just all of that, and it becomes like it's one of those things where we have to feel empathy for people around the world who are going through things, and we have to care. But how much are we of our own mental energy are we going to put at that when there's so many more things that are happening right now in our own lives, in our own daily things that we need to be more focused about before worrying about someone else.
Right.
Like they say it on the airplane, please put the oxygen mask on yourself before putting it on someone else.
That's a great point.
And we're still caring about someone else, but we can't let ourselves get distracted by outside issues when we have so many things that we need to solve for ourselves.
So many, yeah. There's another analogy too. One of my buddies told me, is like, you want to fill your cup first, kind of same thing going on with the airplanes. If you have a full cup and you give it to everyone else, you're empty, you're gone. Yeah. There's nothing you can do. Your energy's like just zapped.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's very, very fascinating just how we want to just make sure we stay the course and understand where we are. Another thing that he poses, the author says, is, are you using technology or is it using you?
I watched that documentary on the social dilemma.
Social dilemma, yeah.
And it was like, it's basically made the thing like, if something is free, you are the product.
You are the product,
right?
Yeah.
And a lot of people, like, we all know this, but we just keep doing it anyways because our brains are so trained to do that. And I mean, this morning I woke up and the first thing I went to was Instagram, right? I got to check my Instagram. And so we're so conditioned to make this our normal that we forget that our normal is like listening to ourselves and waking up in the morning and being, first of all, grateful for being able to wake up.
Yeah.
And then second of all, meditating on our day and what we're going to do and executing instead of thinking, oh, I wonder what all these people that, are my friends, but I don't really care about them. I wonder what they're up to.
Yeah.
And that dopamine just kind of goes,
Well, there's two things that happen right there. One, we're not setting the scene right up. So like you said, the first thing you want to do, go on your phone and do that. So that's already starting yourself off and creating that cycle of the modern siren where you want to be distracted and you want to stay the course. And part of it too is another thing that would be interesting is the FOMO, like you feel like you're missing out and it's just insane.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm trying to think what else. Yeah, so the good thing, one of the other things I love about this chapter about staying the course and avoiding your sirens is kind of just like I said, it's all about setting the scene. It talks about quitting porn altogether. The way that the brain is wired is when you're attracted to stuff like that, like whether it's flashy objects on social media or just anything addicting in general, it wants to tantalize you and attract you towards that same thing over and over again.
And you become desensitized, right?
Very
because
much.
It's like a drug. Like, it doesn't get you as high anymore, and then you're going to keep wanting more, wanting more, and that's literally the addiction, right? Like, I saw a comparison. I think Naval Ravikant himself said this is like social media porn and all these kind of things are our generation's version of like the real struggle that our men and women are going through. And to beat that is rising above like mediocrity and just being okay with everything.
Yeah, and it's addicting, it's getting that dopamine high that we were talking about earlier. Which segues right into the mental mastery,
Yeah.
I'll let you read one of these quotes. Just pick your favorite, like one or two.
Yeah. Actually, in this chapter, there's from Horace, it says, rule your mind or it will rule you. And we see this in a lot of texts. Being able to win the mind means you can win the world. And like that comes through discipline, which is something that I definitely struggle with because like there's always work to be done. There's always something to be done, whether it be self-mastery or self-discovery or self-improvement. But it's so easy to fall into the trap of getting distracted and letting yourself go somewhere else. And so like a lot of people say that, oh, it's so unfortunate that there's a lot of like poor people and there's a lot of bad things happening in the world. But for most of the time, it's kind of self-inflicted. Yeah, people are bad situations, things like that, but a lot of people let their mind wander and go in other places and get distracted. And through discipline and through mastery of your own mind, you can kind of pretty much do anything. We have humans on this planet doing the most insane things, and they're not special. They're not different than anyone else. Right. They just learned how to master their mind.
Yeah, that's a great point. Honestly, like I always struggle with the choosing versus the lifestyle aspect, so I won't dive too into that. But mostly just like the perspective of there's someone better in your position, most likely, maybe not the exact, but a very similar. So if you know they've been successful, that means you have an equal chance of becoming that same person who wants to succeed and who wants to do it. So yeah, I believe some of it has to do with choice, and just fixing your mind is a great way to start with it, because if you just take in all this information, you don't do anything with it, and it's
Nothing's
pretty much pointless.
I think the first step, as the author mentions, to mental mastery is meditation. And a lot of people think like meditation is some spiritual or like religious thing. And it's really not. It's more about just listening to yourself.
Yeah.
Sitting down and letting your mind run.
Isn't that the hard part though?
That's so tough. Like people say like, 5 minutes a day, but 5 minutes feels like an eternity.
Yeah.
I set a timer on my phone. I sit there and close my eyes, and 30 seconds later, I'm already like, how much time has it been? Has it been 5 minutes yet? Like, maybe my alarm didn't turn off. I've had this many times. Maybe I turned my alarm on silent, so I'll do it, and it's only been like the 45 seconds, right? Or even a couple minutes. And I mean, no one ever said it's going to be easy. Right, the most difficult things require the hardest willpower, but the hardest willpower creates the easiest decisions and the easiest life.
Yeah, later on.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's funny. Like the first few times I started meditating, it's like it feels like an eternity. You know, you're like, oh my god, I gotta distract myself. Oh my god, I think about this, and then all those thoughts start popping up and going through a little bit, and so yeah, it's hard to meditate, especially when like everyone feels like they're busy, you know. And it's a struggle. One thing that's awesome in this book that helped me with meditating is I'm a novice in the meditation world. I didn't really look it up. I've seen other people do it.
Yeah.
But in this book, he just simplified it. He's like, okay, you may not be able to do 20 minutes of meditation, but just start with like 5 minutes, like what you said. Like, and when those thoughts pop up, it's okay. The goal of meditation is not to not have thoughts.
Yeah, to acknowledge them.
To acknowledge them. Yeah. And so a great little technique is, he says, when those thoughts do, say, all right, okay, that's fine, and whatever.
Yeah.
Super simple. And that way you accept those thoughts as gifts. You say, okay, I believe that this is okay. Yeah. But they don't control you. Exactly. And that's what meditation will do.
Yeah. And then this chapter kind of goes on, we can, while we move on, but this chapter kind of goes on to different ways to have mental mastery. And I think the biggest thing is that other than meditation in this chapter is living life without regrets. It's really important because we all make mistakes, we all go through things, and we all have those moments where we think back on it and we like really cringe on the inside. Like I've definitely had a few of those where even if it just comes to memory, I'm like, but it's in the past. The only thing we can do from it is learn from it and hope that next time that situation arises, we've learned enough that we won't do it again. Right,
that's a big thing, is saying maybe you thought you knew it, or maybe you need a reminder, so maybe you need to learn a bit more about it. You say, hey, don't dwell on that. Don't dwell on it, you know. It's okay to live your life and don't burden yourself with it, you know. Yeah.
We think we take things too seriously, I think. Bro, this universe is massive. Look up at the stars and see how insignificant you are. And that's not to say that nothing you do matters, but it's to say that the mistakes you make don't really matter, right? Like, as long as you're able to learn from them, as long as you didn't hurt anyone, or if you did, you apologized, or you came to terms with
make
amends, then you just move on. Yeah. And with that, let's move on.
Well, okay, I'm going to touch on this real quick. Similar with the living life with regrets, the quarter life, midlife crisis. Basically, this is interesting because we're getting to that 23, 24, 25, quote-unquote quarter life crisis. Well, that's actually a good thing, he says. You know, he says it's okay to not be okay. You know, it's where that spiritual awakening happens. Where you're like, okay, frick, I got to like actually become a better person, you know? I got to start doing stuff with my life. Be okay, take more accountability, and I just think that we just feel like we put too much emphasis on certain things and say we gotta label it as something bad, when actually it's a good thing that you might be having this trauma right now and going through this weird time.
It's definitely getting to I think to me for sure a little bit. I mean, I'm about to be 24, and it's like, well, what have I really accomplished, and is what am I going to accomplish?
Quick question. That's a great point right there. I want to touch on that. So I think this would be great for our audience too, is what are those accomplishments really what does that mean to you?
What do you mean?
Well, if you get those accomplishments, is that going to change how you think of yourself?
See, that's a good question. I think like right now, I think that it would make a huge difference, but accomplishing them, maybe not necessarily, right? We always hear the stories of like people who like sell their company for billions of dollars, and then they have like crazy depression because they're like, now what?
Yeah, exactly. So did you appreciate the journey? I feel like that's the better thing that we all need to take in context is, hey, like we took it for granted. We took that journey for granted. So maybe you do get that viral video on TikTok, where maybe you busted your ass and you got what you wanted. But if maybe you felt lost. If
that was the end goal, it's probably not going to be worth it. If the work and the journey was the end goal, and that's what was appreciated and thought about, that's when it's fulfilling, I think. Yeah,
it's very, very interesting. Mental mastery during this chapter, I think, is one of the best ones. So we're probably spending majority of the time. So this one, honestly, the cure to he talks about the cure to anxiety. This one was interesting because I know a lot of people nowadays feel like they're anxious, whether it's diagnosed or not. I'm not here to determine that, but still, just like the fact that I even feel anxious, even from the pandemic, like just. It's all about perspective, again, realizing that you're not the only one here, and you're also a little small speck in the sand.
I did like this chapter a lot, especially the anxiety part, because I think it was said somewhere in the book that anxiety is just like we're worrying about the future too much.
Yes. Right?
And being able to, I think later on he talks about your purpose, and being able to understand your purpose will help you reduce your anxiety, because even though what's coming in the future is uncertain, it's still something that like you're driven so strongly by your purpose that it even though it's uncertain, you're more confident in it.
Yeah, and even though and I've heard too that anxiety and excitement are very similar with each other. They're in tune. Yeah. And so even like knowing that it's a new experience, isn't that kind of cool? Like, hey, I've never done this before.
Yeah, it's all about perspective too. Yeah. Obviously there are people with really, really bad anxiety that need medical attention or medication, but it's for the average person, it's about perspective. Like we're anxious about things that normally we're either excited or after the thing is over we'd be like really happy about. Yeah. So that's it's really about how we look at the world and how we look at the things in front of us.
Yeah, even just like as simple as going to the gym. Sometimes I'm like, frick, I don't want to do that, and you get anxious, you're like, oh, I've been pushing it off. And then once you get there, once you do it, you're like, all right, I'm ready to set in,
I think something that's helped me the most with my anxiety, especially to get work done, is like the 2-minute rule. Like, just commit to doing 2 minutes of the work, and then you'll already be on a roll. Yeah. Because we look at this like a task in front of us, and we're like, it's such a monumental, enormous task that like, oh man, but once you actually start doing it 2 minutes, you'll have the momentum to keep going.
Right. It's just getting that 1 minute. It's kind of like, I think Jim Quick, one of the podcasts I listened to, he said, if you have trouble like flossing, just tell yourself you're gonna floss once, two, then it's just so silly. But it's like, it works. You gotta do it, man. And with the So we're going to dive through and talk about just kind of like, he talks a little bit about like the pros and cons of like just following the way that you're following your purpose a little bit. We touched on that a little bit, and just knowing if you are on the right path or not. I feel like people have trouble on realizing, is this my purpose? Is this the right thing?
Mm-hmm. That's definitely something that I struggle with. It's one of those things where like you just have to have faith in that even if things don't go well, I'll figure it out as the time comes, and that comes through kind of building confidence in yourself. That's pretty much it. It's like the most important battle of your life. That's what he says, right? Like, is being self-aware and having that mental mastery at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's more of a mental thing, like that's the whole.
It's the whole point of the chapter. Yeah.
Cool, and we're gonna segue over to the physical mastery. So this one I love being athletic. It drives me. It helps just keep me balanced in life, So when I don't work out or even just stretch or do something physical, I can't sleep at night. It's a struggle for me if I don't do it. It just makes me feel at peace. This one, I know he doesn't specifically talk about in one of the beginning quotes, but he touches on how we wake up in a box, we drive in a box, we go work in a box, just to be able to afford the box that we live in. And so I feel like that's a good basis of this physical mastery, just understanding you got to move sometimes and like have a good balance of sitting down and making your body like more natural, you know?
It's one of those things where it's like, it's a challenge to, even if you're not bodybuilding, or even if you're not like trying to get a certain physical, I guess, to a physical point physically, but you're still pushing yourself no matter what. So even if you're going on the Stairmaster for 20 minutes, like that's insane, right? Like it's and that also translates to mental mastery, because most of the time you have to convince yourself that you can lift the weight. When I was bench pressing, it took me so long to get to 135 to get to a plate, but as soon as I got to a plate, adding weight on top of that was so much easier. And I realized, okay, from 35 to 45 pounds on each side, that was all in my head. Because it's 20 pounds extra, but it took so much mental convincing in my mind that this was not any scarier.
Well, you're also comfortable too.
Exactly. That it wasn't any scarier for me to lift this weight.
Yeah.
And moving forward, then it just became so much easier.
Well, that's the good thing why I love this book, is it connects everything together. That's why I love running so much, because you're the one that actually pointed out to me first, before I really started getting into it again, is it's all in your head, bro.
It's all in your head.
Like getting a mile or two, like 2 years ago, like of course I could physically do it, but I didn't want to do it, you know?
Yeah.
And once you get your body going, you can push yourself past through any little ache that you have.
It was funny, in the beginning of the pandemic, I started running around my community, and I didn't have the fitness tracker that tracked my distance.
Yeah,
so I just ran until I was tired. And eventually I got the fitness tracker and I started checking it. So the first few times I ran 5 or 6 laps around my community, and I felt pretty exhausted after that. So I was like, okay, it's probably a mile or so. After I got the fitness tracker, I found out that 2 laps was a mile. And once I found out 2 laps was a mile, I wasn't able to run more than a mile.
Yeah, you put yourself in check right there. You said, okay, I'm good, after 2 laps.
And that just proves that it's just so much in your head.
Yes.
It's all in your head.
I know people always ask me, Albert, why do you run so far? I mean, you got to strengthen that mind a little bit and just test yourself, you know, move a little bit.
Yep.
Like you said, it doesn't matter what you do. That's a great quote that he actually says. It doesn't really matter if you work out, bodybuild. It's the fact that you are actually doing it. Mm-hmm. People, this is a really common thing I've noticed just from talking from people in my men's group, is people get so fixated on, how should I do this? Should I do calisthenics? Should I do bodybuilding? Mm-hmm. And then that's too much confusion on what the whole idea of moving and being physically
paralysis
active.
by analysis.
Paralysis by analysis, yeah. Now, part of the physical mastery is eating right, you know? This isn't breaking news, but we still have a problem, you know, especially with obesity being a huge thing in our country, and the easy access with DoorDash and processed foods, exactly.
Yeah. That's definitely something that's changed my energy levels, and being just eating fruits and vegetables and as simple plain foods as you can. Not to say that like without any seasoning, without any flavor, but not frozen foods or not like pizza in the oven, you know? Like eating real food, that just life-changing energy to your day. And
it matters on what you buy too. One, like going to the store hungry, it's a game changer. Last night I went to the store hungry and I indulged, I bought some popcorn, you know, which is fun, which isn't bad. I know that once I buy like, whether it's chips,
junk food,
ice cream. I love ice cream, but once I buy it, the carton's gone in a day. Yeah. It's just very interesting. So number 6, we're gonna jump to your purpose.
Mm-hmm. Why are we on Earth?
Why are we here? It's the scariest question ever, but it's also a perplexing one too. People get in their heads about it.
It's like everyone's got that, because we're all, I guess you could say, the main character in our own movie.
We are.
So we have that spotlight effect. And we're always like, oh, we're going to do something big, and we're going to do something, and it can be like one of those crazy daunting thoughts. It's like you scare yourself before even doing anything, and then you don't do anything because you're scared. You're
just so scared. I am such an overanalyzer. That's why I just kind of have to post it and ghost. Like once I put it out there, I'm like, okay, it's all right. It's too late.
It doesn't matter.
It's already on the internet. You know, what can you do about it? But still, it's just understanding, being okay with who you are. Mm-hmm. And that's a big thing right there. It's like, if you don't learn to love yourself, that's something that I've definitely really had to take in the last couple of months. I just got over a breakup, or still am, and so realized that I was living their life and not something that I was, and my body was telling me, like with just the way that I was interacting with that person and like with other people in my life in general, was like I wasn't staying true. My body was neglecting me by just saying it was neglecting me by not having the daily motivation
Mm-hmm.
and desire to want to become better.
Yeah. That's, I think, something really important, especially in relationships, is being so solid in your own identity and your
Yes.
own purpose before, because once you're in a relationship, you're coexisting with another individual.
Yeah.
And in order to do that successfully, you can't really have doubts about yourself or
Mm-hmm.
not know what your identity is, not know what your purpose is, because then you kind of mold into one person.
Yeah.
And it's important to be two individual people who coexist together.
Right.
And but not one molded individual, like, you know.
Yeah, I think the thing is everyone wants to be independent. Everyone thinks it's the top tier.
Yeah.
But it's interdependency.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what that means is, like you said, coexisting both as individuals, but complementing each other as well, so that you guys can become the best versions of yourself while still living your purposes in life.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I feel like people kind of get lost in translation there. One quote that I wanted to point out that he says is, if you don't create your own values, others will impose theirs on you.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I just joined a men's group recently where we have a vision of where we want to be, but our values, things that we like about ourselves, that's the river that kind of guides us down. If we
Mhm.
don't have those values, we're just traveling endlessly,
Yeah.
and you don't have clear boundaries of who you are and what you want to be.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, this is, I know was a chapter that you highlighted on as one of your top
Yeah,
ones.
it's the idea that, like, we have to go through that hero's journey, right? Like, the first step of the hero's journey is, like, you have the call, but then you ignore it,
Yeah.
right? Until something happens and then that pushes you over that threshold. And, like, we see that in every movie and every book and everything. Like, usually the hero's like, nah, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go after it. And a lot of us get stuck at that point.
Well, it's scary because we don't want to cross that threshold.
Yeah, but also, like, we live a life of such comfort.
Yeah.
That we feel okay. And I'm not saying, like, I'm over this or I'm, you know, a master at this. I definitely fall prey to this too, but I just feel okay. I wake up in the morning and I'm like, I don't have to work.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I got a little bit of money.
It's coming through, you have your needs met.
Yeah, and that is dangerous.
Very.
Being comfortable is like, you're stuck. You're not moving forward. You're not going anywhere.
Yeah, well, it's hard to see the future, when we're so young. We say, hey, we've had this, we've been used to, like, our parents either supporting us or just having some backbone there to have a little bit of comfort. And part of the reason why I want to go on this journey now is, like, for my future journey, like, my legacy, my kids and my future, it's putting that in perspective and going back to that and saying, once we pass that threshold, it's going to be scary out there. We don't know, but it'll be all worth it, just going through that jungle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Alrighty. Relationships and mentors, chapter 7.
Yeah.
This one is very real. You are the product of the 5 closest people in your life.
100%. Jim Rohn was like, if you show me, like, the bank balances of the 5 people that you most hang out with, you'll probably be, like, really close to the average of those.
Yeah, you'll show your future.
Yeah, go ahead.
This one's scary for me, because I love my friends.
Yeah.
I love the people that I grew up with. I love the people I surround myself with. And it's hard to understand that that's part of life, is growing in and out of relationships, whether it's a friendship, mentorship, and just knowing that it's okay if you want to leave your friends to go pursue something else. It's okay to go and do something that you're into, because your path is not the same as theirs, and that's a part of life. And it's hard for me to do that.
Yeah, it's the same thing with, like, the relationships that we just spoke about. Like,
Yeah.
even with your friends, you get molded into their life.
Yeah.
And everyone's having fun and you don't want to miss out. You have that FOMO, but at the end of the day, like, sometimes you have a bigger purpose. And the more you put off kind of leaving your group and leaving the comfort of your circle, the longer it's going to take for you to get there.
Yeah, and like you said, it's going back on that hero's journey. Are you okay with going on that alone? Something that I've had to realize is being alone is okay.
It's scary, but it's okay.
Very scary, being alone with your thoughts and just
Yeah.
understanding I have to do this right now to make sure I get the life that I want in the future.
Exactly. One of the things the author mentions in this chapter is, like, about your mentors. We allow our mentors to be social media and be all this kind of stuff that's, like, we're learning. All my friends are like, oh yeah, I learned this on TikTok. I mean, you didn't really learn it. You, like, got a 2-second video. You got a 2-second video about it, got maybe one statistic, and now you've, real mastery comes after, like, thousands and thousands of hours of dedication and practice and going at it over and over again, right? So allowing I guess these internet personalities to be your mentors can be really detrimental unless they're solid. You're actually really learning and diving deep. We have to be careful about the information that we let into our minds.
Yeah. I mean, to go on that last point that you said about letting who's in your life, he also does include some mentors that he's had on YouTube and stuff. Just like you said, people will have a following, and it also depends on what your personality is too and what you cater to. But there's also great benefits of the internet to kind of use mentors that instead of calling someone saying, hey.
Exactly. You don't need to have like an apprenticeship or anything anymore. Like you can learn so much from the internet almost all for free. Yeah. Right? And even for like paid courses, there are some really smart people out there who have created courses and created programs that are extremely beneficial. So just being able to filter out all the noise and focus on only the important things, that's wildly important.
Yeah, and I've even gotten a mentor for my business as well. I'm sure you have. You have also, right? Yeah, it's good. We need it, whether it's for accountability, structure, and learning more about the business, and just understanding how you can grow from that as well.
Exactly.
I want to touch base a little bit more on like what makes a great relationship. What does that mean? First, we can kind of go through what he says, but what do you believe? I think on your foundation,
the greatest relationship is the one. I always say this, like, how do you know when you're like comfortable with someone? Is when you can sit in complete silence with them and not feel obligated to speak. If you can just be in each other's presence, even if it's just a friendly relationship, like that's so important.
I really respect that because sometimes people aren't comfortable with silence at all. They either have to turn on the radio or they always have to be talking, which is fine. That depends on the person, but I mean, sometimes I just want to just chill with you and just have your presence with you and feel your energy. You know, like it doesn't always have to to be talking. That's a good point. For me, I've been kind of in this mindset of like, not really like selfish, but kind of just like, what does that person bring value to me? Can we both win in this relationship, and can we both learn and grow together? You know? Like you said, our purposes might not be the same, but understanding that you win, I win. Yeah. You lose, I lose, and just understanding that we can grow together, and we don't have to necessarily have.
We don't even have to compete.
Right. Yeah. So that's something that's interesting. I did want to touch on the actual relationships of like intimate, because he does bring this up in the book, and I thought, one, I want to hear your thoughts, and two, just kind of want to talk about it. And I don't necessarily agree with everything that he said, but mostly just kind of like, just kind of opening up to a new reality of how we look at relationships. He says like taking the red pill, kind of in Matrix, like opening up of how to be yourself around women that you're attracted to. He says that how do you get your actual joy? Do you get it from either from validation from that person, or do you get it from yourself and learning to love yourself a little bit?
Yeah, it's definitely a tough thing, because like we all want to have that significant other. But it becomes like, as we mentioned before, if you're not really solid on your identity and your purpose, you're going to be dependent on them. And then if they leave, which if you're only dependent on them, they're probably going to get bored and leave. Yeah. Then you're screwed.
Have you ever felt like you were either people pleasing or doing something for that other person just for their validation?
Oh, definitely. Most of the stuff is like we have to realize it's driven by our own egos. Yes. Right? And we're so desperate for like validation or for love or for that kind of thing that we'll do anything just to feel that. Yeah. But that's not sustainable. We have to really, really understand that it takes a lot of our own self discovery to be able to then successfully be in a relationship or have that experience.
Yeah, because if you don't know who you are, then what's the point? I relate to that so much, man. Like I grew up in a household where I wanted to always like please my parents, because they told me and gave me validation, which isn't on them. That's how you should promote that. But I put that in my relationships now because I don't like confrontation. Yeah. Because my parents got divorced, and so I saw the end result of fighting and stuff. So my role was to always mold together. Yeah. But when you do that, you give yourself up and you don't show your true value to that person, and it suffers. It's not a healthy relationship.
Even in a long-term, committed, real, like loving relationship, you're still two individuals living your own life. Right. You may be living it together, and you may be existing together in a very like harmonious whatever way, but at the end of the day, you have to really have your own identity. Yeah, and even if you don't, then you're lost.
And even then, on here, another point is, love isn't the only thing that's going to hold something together. Yeah. We're again going back to the validation. We love that feeling of love, feeling close to someone. Yeah. Sharing that intimacy, but
that's not sustainable.
It doesn't hold at all, because you might be sacrificing your own purpose. And yeah, it's tough, you know, especially as a man. Once you get comfortable with like that feeling,
Yeah.
we want to crave it
More. Yeah, it's addicting. Yeah, for sure.
So he also says a breakup is one of the best things that can ever go to a man. And
I agree.
I never realized that until I just got it from mine.
I agree. You learn a lot about yourself during that time.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of pain involved. And then slowly over time, that pain goes away. And then you're like, okay, now I can sit down and objectively think about this without obviously emotions or pain. There's maybe a little bit there, but you can really learn about yourself during that time.
So much.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of just being okay with that pain that first part. However much time you need, you know, it's okay. But then what are you gonna do after that? You
Exactly.
know, that's where a lot of people have trouble with, and I've done it in the past. You abuse either alcohol,
You fall into
drugs,
a destructive cycle. Yeah.
maybe you watch too much Netflix, and you be okay with that. And that's where it's kind of like you want to own your shit, you want to take accountability, and what are you gonna do about it? You know, to kind of become that better person.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, just understand that you got to be who you want to be, you know. Like you said, when you come out of a relationship, your identity may feel lost.
Exactly. Yeah. And then you got to like refine it. But if you're so strong in your purpose and identity before going into a relationship and it ends, I think you'll have a less tough time refinding or like coming back to terms with normalcy.
Yeah.
And that's also really important because if relationships don't last forever.
No.
Even we see the most loving and amazing family relationships and marriages, they don't always last forever.
Yeah.
Right? And if you're so invested in the other person, I'm not saying don't be invested in your family, don't be invested in the other person, but if that is your entire life, when it comes to an end, you're lost.
You feel lost.
Yeah. And it'll take even longer to bounce back.
So much longer. But that's what putting this all together from what we've learned so far is either do something like meditation or get your mind a little bit stronger, journal, like whatever outlet, or even just talking to a friend.
Yeah.
That's why we have people in other relationships in our life that we can count on when we realize that we're at our lowest point, and that's what's awesome about it. So there's something that's really interesting that he points out. I wanted to get your thoughts on it. He said most guys in relationships are worse off. So now I think this is a little bit of a clickbaity title. For me, I can kind of relate in a little bit, but that's just from me because I was sacrificing myself.
Yeah.
Now, of course, that doesn't mean love doesn't exist, but just kind of just understanding that if you aren't living your purpose,
then
what's the point?
What's the point? I completely agree. I think that title is kind of true because most guys, including myself, and don't have our own identities yet. Yeah. Right? And so we would be worse off in a relationship. And we keep bringing this up over and over again, but you really need to know your shit before getting into a relationship. And you learn a lot during a relationship, and you learn a lot about yourself and all that. But it's such a complete waste of time if you're in the relationship thinking that the other person is going to make you whole. Right. Do you think that men get complacent in relationships? Oh, extremely. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've experienced this myself. Extremely complacent, and things get lazy, and that's why, like, unless you're really solid in your purpose, you shouldn't be chasing a relationship. If one happens and naturally, that's fine, but like that shouldn't be your primary goal. Yeah. Your primary goal should be like figuring out your mind and that mental mastery and what identity. You want in life too. Yeah, it's so hard, you know, when social media throws it at you, ads throw it at you. Yeah, and it's nice to be like catered to the person that you're attracted to, or like whatever gender you're attracted to. You know, you want to have that approve what feels good, but just finding that balance. That's like the main goal for a lot of people, and it shouldn't be, at least at first. Yeah, you know? Until you're a little bit more secure in where you are. Yeah. Cool. So creating wealth, chapter 8. I like this chapter a lot. Yeah. A lot of people don't think about wealth. They think about earning money. What is wealth? I was going to say, what does wealth mean to you? Wealth means the ability, having the ability to not have to chase, I guess, just straight income or money. Mm-hmm. Wealth means having that, I guess, backing of assets that protects you in all financial circumstances, caters to your generational like needs, like your great grandkids should be taken care of. I think the average person is like, okay, let me go get a $60,000 a year job, and then maybe in 5 years I'll get paid $100,000 a year. Then, you know, a few years later, blah, blah, blah. And as their income grows, their expenses grow. Okay, now we're gonna get a house. Now we're gonna, you know, have kids and pay for their college and, you know, all that kind of stuff. But they never take like a few years to really build up wealth. And I'm not saying don't get a job. I mean, it's great to get it. You should have a job. You should have income. But unless you're using your money to buy more money, you're doing it wrong. You should not be spending the money you're earning from your day-to-day job. That money, like almost all of it, should be going to figuring out how to create wealth while you're asleep. So whether it's buying a business, whether it's buying real estate, whether it's, investing in the stock market, crypto, whatever it is,
have that money work for you.
Have that money work for you, and then spend that money. The money that's earned from the working money, spend as much as you want.
Yeah. So
right?
What would you say though to someone who, quote unquote, wants a nice work-life balance? So whether
you can absolutely have a work-life balance, right? Take a portion of your money and put it in the S&P 500 every month, right? Have that growing at whatever it does every year, 15-20% a year. And the power of compounding, people kind of overlook it, right? There's like that one thing like, hey, I'll give you $1 million today, or I'll give you a penny that doubles every day for 30 days. And until the 28th day, that penny is still worth under $1 million, right? But the 29th and 30th day, you make way more than $1 million, right? So people kind of deny or ignore the power of compounding and how very passively you can really create generational wealth. You can have your kids' college paid for. You can have your great-grandkids taken care of, right? Isn't that the goal? The goal isn't to hoard as much money as possible and be super greedy. It's to make sure that your future generations are taken care of.
Yeah. Interesting. That's a great perspective.
Yeah.
I know I always go back and forth because like I want that too, but I also want to make sure that my mind and my body is at peace as well too. So kind of just forming all that at once. It can be very intimidating, but like you said, it's just having that discipline and just understanding what the end goal in mind is on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, and then I think in this chapter he talks about taking risks.
Yeah.
Wealth doesn't come without taking risks.
No.
Right? Like, you have to invest. You have to put something on the line because the risk to reward is what creates reward.
Right, what Jim Rohn says, he says, everything's risky.
Yeah.
Not doing anything is risky. And then he says, what about when that bill comes at the end of the month? If you didn't take that risk, doesn't matter, especially at our age too. Like,
exactly,
we need to be taking risks.
This is the time to take the most risk because if they pay out, we're good. If they don't, we're still okay because we don't have a family, we don't have kids to be like accountable to yet, right? Like, we can still bounce back.
Right.
And there's one thing that I read. It was like in 2008 when the financial crisis happened. There was a couple of big stockbrokers who were like, no, it's over, like, we're screwed, we're going into a crazy recession. It's been 15 years since then.
Yeah.
And the stock market's only gone up.
Yeah.
Real estate's only gone up. So the people who listened to them and sat out because they didn't want to take the risk, they're missing out on 15 years of gains.
Right.
And 15 years of compounding.
Best time to buy real estate was 20 years ago.
And the second best time is right now.
Right now.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very fascinating. He touches base here specifically on like how money is not always the only thing to search for.
Yeah.
However, it's a great tool to kind of balance everything out and make sure that your mental health is also stable as well. It was very fascinating. Also, there's a quote here that I wanted to touch base on. Man has two lives. The second one starts when he realizes he is going to die. So this kind of touches base on the whole risk aspect of it,
We have to contemplate our own mortality.
Yeah.
We have to wake up every morning and say, thank you for being alive today. But this could be the last breath or the last day that I have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to live it like it is.
Yeah.
Because we don't know, bro. Nobody knows.
We don't know if we're going to have aneurysm or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So nobody knows. So like we kind of forego our own mortality because we have all these distractions and we have all these fantasies about the future. Bro, it could end in a second.
And
right?
moment.
So every moment is you have to be so ultimately present in that moment that's contentment. That's like beauty in life.
It's so hard, but just trying to just enjoy that energy with that person, and saying, I want to give as much energy as I can to this moment. Yeah. It doesn't really matter about how much time you're spending with them per se.
Yeah.
Of course, it's great to have more time, but if you're only giving 10% of your energy to that person, and it's been a whole day experience, is that better than a 1 hour giving your 80% that you can give right then and there? It's just something that we have to look at a little bit more, I think, versus just. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. This is insane. You will never be wealthy if you don't complain. Or if you complain.
If you complain.
Yeah. That's crazy. Kind of like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done this like 10 days ago, instead of procrastinating. Well, you didn't. It's okay.
Yeah. So
move on. Get started right now, like let's go and do this now.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is also fascinating too. The 7 base financial principles. He said, first, try to be able to spend your time in a way you want to spend your time. Time is your best resource, you know. Understand that very little is needed to feel content in life. Approach wealth creation from this perspective, you know, kind of just understanding your base
your
foundation
needs
first, and then everything else will kind of follow. He said specifically to understand Naval Ravikant's philosophy on wealth creation. It'll help you create your financial independence. This one's interesting. He said, understand capitalism. I know a lot of people kind of go back and forth about whether it's the right one or not. However, it's the one in the United States that we live in. And so just understanding how you can take advantage of that and be your true self, you know. There's nothing wrong with buying or wanting expensive stuff, especially if you're in enjoyment. Yeah. Kind of going back to the ego thing.
Yeah, it's like I want a Lamborghini, but I want it because I like cars, not because I want everyone else to see me in a Lamborghini. You know? And if you're spending money and doing things for other people, then you're living your life again in accordance with like validation of others, not for your own identity.
Yeah, and you're sucking literally the life force out, like giving it to that. You're basically giving that joy to other people instead of just living it to yourself. Yeah. Be smart with your money. It's plain and simple, you know. Like if you're strained, sometimes we gotta live within our means, you know, and that's okay. Yeah. You know, just knowing what the end goal is gonna be. And it's worthy to be self-sufficient, have the ability to provide for other people you care for. Kind of like talking about the generational wealth, you know, in the future. So, yeah. And then we're kind of finishing out the chapter 9 is just going over everything that we learned, the principles of the base man. So I'm going to have you read half of it, the first half, and I'll finish it off.
So 1, meditate a minimum of 10 minutes once a day. Take a walk every day, preferably in nature for at least 20 minutes. Jog for 30 minutes or more every other day. Get enough sleep. This is a big one.
It's a huge one.
Eat healthy, whole foods. Avoid sugar and never drink soda. 100%. Die before you die. Contemplate your death and use it as a tool to lead the life you want. Right. And have mentors, and only allow people into your life who bring you a positive net benefit. Read books and develop a thirst for knowledge. Always be curious and ask and listen more than you talk.
Very interesting. Yeah. You know, that one's hard for people, you know, especially when like we just want to tell and express what we think. Number 10, be on your purpose. No woman or man should be able to throw you off your purpose and make that your point of origin. Don't compare yourself to others, you know, like it's so easy to do that. Oh yeah. Quit porn and just kind of understand what you want to do. Don't complain. Don't be sorry, be better. 13, your most valuable resource is your time. Cherish that and put yourself in a position to create meaning and feel your purpose. Judge people by their actions, not their words. Be a man of your word. Yeah. Hold yourself accountable to your life. This one's hard, you know, like being your one and only person, it's really difficult. Be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Get out of your comfort zone. Stress is never a good thing. Unless you're getting uncomfortable. Unless you're getting uncomfortable, then you might be a little bit stressed. That one I have a little bit trouble with. Because
that's not a concrete.
I feel like that's, what do you define stress as, you know? Because you got to put your body under stress too if you want to become a master at your physicality. Understand these concepts experimentally and spiritually, not just intellectually. So you kind of just reiterated what we just said, you know? These are just what he believes as a principle, as a base man. But you also have to experience them yourself, you know.
And develop your own framework.
Yes.
Yeah, because you can't just rely on someone else to tell you everything, right?
Right, and your journey's not theirs too, you know. Like you got to live your life. You got to take your own risks. You got to live and learn, and not everything's gonna be the same for everyone.
100%.
Yeah. So also at the end it also has. Should we go over this one too?
I don't think so.
No. Okay. Yeah. There's also quotes of everything in there as well as in chapter 11. We didn't really go over all the book, so if you want to get more insight, definitely read it. Yeah. It's very fascinating. Just kind of just understanding the fundamentals of your life and how you can better yourself. It was awesome.
As I said in the beginning, like it's nothing too crazy that we don't know, but it's a good reminder, and it's a really straightforward, solid framework for how to live as a man or woman in this society. Yeah. And I think it just provides a really good reminder on things that we don't normally keep in the forefront of our mind that we should.
Yeah, it's very simplified, and it's great reminders. Like you said, it's not. I don't think most of it was new information
Yeah,
per se. It was just said in a different
way and different perspective. And
yeah, I think everyone would get some great value from it. You know?
Yeah, for sure. It's a really good book.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
Cool. Well, thank you guys. We're going to be doing more books in the future.
Yeah.
And we'll see you guys soon.
Sounds good.
Let's get after it.
Peace.